That didn't work. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Jared Barnes Show. Rough start live right now on YouTube for anybody watching. I am your host, Jared Barnes. We are reacting live right now to the end of the NFL trade deadline. It's been a wild last 2 or 3 hours with the trade deadline. We will start with the biggest trade. So one of the second biggest trades in the NFL so far this season. In the current season, Christian McCaffrey went last week. We saw that a all-pro level running back. Today we saw quite a few trades, and the biggest one being outside linebacker Bradley Chubb being traded to the Miami Dolphins. In this trade, the Denver Broncos receive a first-round pick for this year, which happens to be a first-round pick that the San Francisco 49ers formerly owned and had traded it to the Miami Dolphins, a 2024 fourth-round draft pick, and they receive my brain just stopped working. I'm going to restart that. The Denver Broncos traded Bradley Chubb. Miami's trading their first-round pick, a 2024 fourth, Chase Edmonds, and yeah, that's massive. To land an outside linebacker at his age, he's 26 years old. 26. At the other side, on the defense, they will have Jalen Phillips, their defensive end, who's 23 years old and an up-and-coming pass rusher. He now is not going to be asked to be the number one. He can be the number two. This defense was in need of somebody up front to really cause some havoc and create pressure in the pass game. Because this defense we saw last week versus the Detroit Lions could not stop anybody. It's pretty much been all year. They got dominated by the Ravens. They got beat by the Bengals. They gave up 20-something points to the Detroit Lions, who have a good offense, but as a team overall are not that good. And they even traded a player away today. So this was a massive, massive move by the Miami Dolphins, and it's exciting to watch because this just tells me that they're all in. It's Super Bowl or bust right now for the Miami Dolphins because they know they have a chance of doing it. They have young weapons. They have talented weapons. They have one of the most dynamic receivers in all of football in Tyreek Hill. And now they add a dynamic pass rusher in Bradley Chubb. Micah, you're here. How do you feel about this trade for the Dolphins? And do you think that they have a legitimate chance to really make a deep run in the playoffs making these kind of moves?
I mean, yeah, for sure. They're trading somebody that's a little bit better in every little aspect of the game. Honestly, I wouldn't see why not. I mean, it'll get a little bit better I'm excited to see what the next game looks like because that's really going to determine whether they're going to be like a wild card or really in. So to see what happens, it'll be interesting. So I'm excited. I think it's a good trade.
Yeah, and it has blown my mind to see in just how quickly the Dolphins have been able to turn it around from being just a mediocre mid-tier football team. And they do have a few losses this year, but you do have to take into account his health into those because when he is healthy, he's 5-0 as a starter this year.
Yeah, he hasn't lost at all.
And that's just impressive. They made some moves, but another team that made some moves, a team that is a real contender, especially now, the Minnesota Vikings traded inside the division to land tight end from the Lions, TJ Hawkinson. In this trade, which baffled me because you don't see in-division trades for someone this talented, the Detroit Lions, didn't get a whole lot in return for a level of tight end that he is, especially with the way the Vikings offense kind of works, where a tight end is very important to this offense. And they just lost Irv Smith Jr. for at least 8 to 10 weeks. So landing a guy like Hawkinson to throw in that offense and let him play alongside Thielen and Jefferson looks like an unstoppable force. The Lions in this trade only receive back a second-round pick in this year's upcoming draft and a fourth-round pick. They have a lot of picks moving forward in this draft, but it's not something that is that great of a return for a player of his caliber. I mean, he's maybe top 7 in the league at tight ends. I can't think of 6. There's only like 6 guys that are maybe better than he is. And Irv Smith Jr. himself was a talented tight end who's just he hasn't put it together yet. And now if he returns later in this season, he'll be asked to be the 2, which you can't ask for a better number 2 tight end on your team. But 6-1 the Minnesota Vikings are, and they are not slowing down. They want to make sure they win the NFC North, and they want to go further than that. And this trade proves that right there. And other teams in their division were making moves today. Justin Fields has finally gotten some help in, taking one of my wide receivers away from my team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool is now a Chicago Bear. And all the Steelers got in return as a second-round draft pick, but as a Steeler fan, I'm happy with this trade. We're not competitive right now, and Chase Claypool doesn't really make us any better. Like, getting rid of him only helps us because we're a team that has a lot of holes, and we're not gonna figure it out this year. We need to build in the draft. With this trade, if we continue to be as bad as we are, and Chicago continues to be as bad as we are, the Pittsburgh Steelers will have 3 picks inside the top 50 in this upcoming NFL draft, which for us would be huge because we need some help on the offensive line. We need some help along the defensive line. I mean, it doesn't matter what we draft. If we continue to have Matt Canada as our offensive coordinator, we're not going to figure it out on offense regardless. But if we can get some offensive line help, that would be great. There's an offensive tackle that plays for Penn State. Drafting him in the 2nd round or late 1st, if we have to trade back up to get him, would be the best move in my eyes. But let's get back to Chicago because that was a massive move. There's not really been a receiver that's really worth much in Justin Fields' tenure as a quarterback. He's had Darnell Mooney, and that's pretty much it. There hasn't been much help. And this offseason, they did the exact opposite of attempting to help Justin Fields by offloading pretty much anybody that made any money on their roster, shipping them out of town and saying we're going to go into a quick 1-year rebuild, hoping that next year when we have a bunch of cap space, we can figure it out. They realize their offense is pretty decent right now, and adding in a young weapon, building chemistry for the remainder of this season with Justin Fields, Chase Claypool has the chance to potentially blossom into what he thinks he is in his mind already, a top 3 wide receiver in this league. I don't think he can become that, but he can very easily be a team's legit number 1 if he continues to develop correctly. So this was a great move by Chicago, only giving up a 2nd-round pick because you know what you're going to get with him. You don't always know what you're going to get with 2nd-round wide receivers in the NFL. We've seen this with the Jets recently. I think it was like 2 years in a row they drafted Denzel Mims in 2020, and then 2021 they drafted Elijah Moore. Neither one of those guys have been game changers for them, and they both drafted them in the 2nd round. Giving up a 2nd-round pick for a proven commodity like Claypool is a great, great move. Back to my Steelers, though. They weren't done dealing at that point. Will Jackson, a corner from the Washington football team, has been traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers as well. And this was not a deal where the Steelers had to give up much to get him. We just kind of swapped late-round picks in a future draft, 2025. And this is a move I'm a big fan of. We had the chance to draft Will Jackson until he got stolen away from us by the Bengals in 2016. He was picked 1 pick in front of us. We were going to draft him. The Bengals stole him from us. We didn't get to get him. Then we didn't want to get him in free agency because we didn't want to overpay for him. Now we get him for a cheap draft pick in a much better position. Very exciting for me because I'm a very large fan of Will Jackson. He wasn't a good fit in Washington. They have not figured it out, but I think he could figure it out in Pittsburgh. Brian Flores working on the defense, Mike Tallman working on the defense, and my brain just blanked on our defensive coordinator, but it's whatever. He's good defensive mind as well. Yeah. And having those 3 guys, hopefully getting Will Jackson in there in a week or 2, starting as our probably number 1 corner because we don't really have a true number 1, is going to be great because by then, hopefully TJ Watt is back by then. And then we can really see what kind of a difference this makes on our defensive side of the football. But there were some more trades because this trade deadline delivered every single time. Calvin Ridley, a wide receiver that this season won't take a single snap in the NFL because he's actually not allowed to step on a field, has been traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, this is not one that confused me. He was supposed to be traded last offseason until it came out that he gambled $1,500 on a parlay, which included the Falcons, to beat the team that he got traded to. A good trade for the Jaguars because this gives them a chance to have a legit number one alongside of Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, and Marvin Jones Jr., along with anybody who they might draft in the upcoming draft, because I feel like offensively they really need some help. This is a great pickup in my mind just because next year he'll be coming off of an entire year's rest. He should not have any type of injuries. He should be fully healthy. He should be in good shape unless he's sitting around on the couch right now. But I'd assume Calvin Ridley wants to come back and, because he sees other guys that did some other worse things and are playing this season in the NFL, and he is not because he bet $1,500, which isn't even, he makes 10 times that every single week he wants to. So next year, him on the Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence, with Travis Etienne, with Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Marvin Jones Jr., Dan Arnold, that should be an offense right there that makes some moves, shocks some people. I don't think they'll be that good this year, but if they can continue to build chemistry, momentum, next year they could be a force to be reckoned with as long as Trevor Lawrence figures it out. There were some other really big trades, though, that I don't have right here. The Miami Dolphins also traded Jeff Wilson. They received Jeff Wilson in a trade from the 49ers. So in their trade for Bradley Chubb, they had to give up Chase Edmonds, a backup running back for them, which is sad because he's a good receiver in the passing game. But Jeff Wilson, a running back that comes from the system that Mike McDaniels coached him because he was on the 49ers last year, Mike McDaniel has struggled to run the ball completely. He just completely struggled to run the ball this year. Raheem Mostert, very talented running back, very fast. For whatever reason, they can't figure out the running game. Jeff Wilson has worked well in that Mike McDaniel system as a rusher. So is Mostert. These are two guys that know the system well. We'll see if it improves their run game down the stretch, because if it does, if you give that team a run game with the weapons they currently have on offense and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, that is an unstoppable team. And now you have to worry about their pass rush, which you did not have to worry about before. And there's corners coming back, getting healthy, hopefully, for the Miami Dolphins. This is a great, great thing. But overall, it was an interesting and fun trade deadline. Does anybody in here think they have an outright winner or loser in this trade deadline? I think the Miami Dolphins are easy winners in this trade deadline.
Easy win for the Dolphins, for sure.
There were still some other trades that happened over the last few days and weeks that we could take into consideration as well. The 49ers getting Christian McCaffrey, still a massive move, and we're seeing how it paid off this week when he went for he had 3 touchdowns, rushing, passing, and receiving. He had my brain is forgetting, the hat trick of touchdowns, which you don't see in the NFL. And then Roquan Smith yesterday, just a massive trade deadline, and it was extremely exciting to kind of watch and be a part of. And hopefully, this is a decent reaction. There's some other trades we could touch on real quick if we really wanted to.
The Nyheim Hines.
Yeah, Nyheim Hines getting traded to the Buffalo Bills, which for them is a great addition because in their running back room, they don't really have a running back that catches the ball really well out of the backfield. Nyheim Hines has been proven to do that very, very well for the Indianapolis Colts. That's been his bread and butter over the last few seasons. With Josh Allen, that's going to be a massive difference. Now, the Colts in return get Zach Moss, which I did see Jay Glazer tweet that, who is more of a physical runner. But the Bills didn't have a use for him because they drafted Dalvin Cook's brother, James Cook, in this last draft in the 4th round. They have Devin Singletary. And now you put Nyheim Hines in that backfield. That's just one other weapon on that offense you have to worry about, which he doesn't make that offense significantly better, but he makes that offense more harder to defend, which was already hard enough to defend unless you have a defensive coordinator that's completely inept and puts their best corner on the 5th round draft pick wide receiver from this previous draft, like the Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator did this week when he had Jair Alexander guarding a no-name wide receiver on a touchdown play where that Stephon Diggs had, which I question that kind of coaching. But at the same time, hindsight's 50-50. Joe Barry hopefully should learn from it, but he also coached a defense that went 0-16, so I'm sure he won't. But there were some other trades as well. But Jacob Martin, a pass rusher for the Jets, got traded to the Denver Broncos, them trying to fill the void of the loss of Bradley Chubb. That is one that to me is very interesting, the Bradley Chubb trade. We can go back to this one real quick. Because the Denver Broncos were a team that was supposed to be Super Bowl competitors this year when they landed Russell Wilson. And that just has not been the case. They've been below average, not even at best, just below average completely. They haven't been fun to watch. They haven't been entertaining. The football they're putting out on the field has not been good football at all. They've been known to be bad this year. So trading away one of your best defensive players was wild to me, but I guess you do need to recoup some picks because you now know that the future isn't necessarily as bright as you thought it was when you traded for Russell Wilson. So with this, they get another first-round pick that they didn't have this year. Hopefully they can land some talent, but I don't think one singular first-round pick necessarily helps them figure things out. But definitely going to be interesting to see. But that's about pretty much all I have. Does anybody else have anything?
Just as like a little side thought, well, you said that like for the Steelers, you're gonna have like a lot of for like top 50 options, right? Or like at least like 3. So you said,
Yeah.
like what kind of options does that really open up to them in terms of like, yeah, they have a 3 top 50 picks, but like what kind of things are they going to be looking to pick up in that?
That's just, I think the reason that's really good for the Steelers is because that's not something you see a team of their supposed caliber ever have. Steelers are not a team that you ever see pick that high in the draft. So, like, there's a chance our top pick in the first round is going to be in the top 10. That could be a game-changing talent player. Now, you can still get a guy like that at 30 in the 20s and 30s, which is normally where we pick because we're in the playoffs normally. But we haven't been all that great the last few years, picking a little bit higher. You give us a chance to get a elite level player immediately, which not every top 10 pick is, but an elite level player. The kind of talent that goes in the second round as well is highly underrated. There's guys that are second round picks right now that are fantastic NFL players. Nick Chubb, second round pick. Derek Carr, as well as he hasn't played lately, he's been a franchise quarterback for the Raiders. He's a second round draft pick. There's offensive linemen that are second round draft picks. You have that high of picks, you just get a chance at better talent. Now, if your talent evaluation skill is poor and lackluster, there's still a chance you miss. But that gives you a chance to get a much younger player, a much better player than what you currently have for a much cheaper price than probably anything else on your roster. So having that high of a pick is just extremely beneficial, especially for the Pittsburgh Steelers who have, you look at that offensive line, a lot of holes there, a lot of holes on the defensive side of the football. There's some corners, there's some defensive linemen we can get at that point. There's some offensive linemen we can get when we're that high. We can take some real skill players. My hope is still, and now there's a better chance for it to happen, that the Steelers do what is the trend currently in the NFL. My hope is that the Steelers see the kind of success Kenny Pickett had at Pitt and go, oh, we have a high draft pick now in the first round. We now have a hole at receiver. Jordan Addison, come home. Jordan Addison was a Biletnikoff Award winner at the University of Pitt, which is the best wide receiver, which means he won the best wide receiver award in college football the year him and Kenny Pickett were on the same team. You combine those two again at Pittsburgh regardless of what happens, you're going to sell tickets at least. And I think Addison, of most of the receivers you see currently in college football, has the best chance of becoming a legit one. It's a trend because you see it with Tua and Jalen in Miami. You've seen it with Travis Etienne, although he's a running back, and Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. It's also happened in the NFL, even if it wasn't guys getting drafted. Marquise Brown and Kyler Murray, they were dogs at Oklahoma. And then Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith, also part of that trend as well. So hopefully the Steelers participate in that, take Addison, and then take some offensive line help with the 2 other picks. But is that everything? I think we covered it. Pretty good?
Yeah.
All right.
I think so.
Appreciate you guys for tuning in for our NFL trade deadline recap live. There's been some other trades that have happened since, so I will hit on those real quick. They're kind of smaller stuff. Rashad Fenton, corner for the Chiefs, has been traded to the Falcons, which kind of shocks me because he's pretty decent. But, yeah, that's it. There were some people that sat, though, that I find interesting that they didn't. So before I actually bounce, I do have one more thing to say. There's been a few teams that didn't make any moves that I expected to. The Packers made 0 moves. It's kind of concerning that they didn't try to go out and get receiver help, especially considering that there was guys on the market. The Texans were openly shopping Brandon Cooks. The Steelers were openly shopping Chase Claypool. It's now been proven that you could have got out and went and got an elite tight end in TJ Hawkinson in your own division, and they didn't do that either. So I would just assume that their front office has not been aggressive, and this is going to lead to them losing Aaron Rodgers probably after this season, and it's definitely going to be on them when that happens. But it was definitely disappointing to see. There was some supposed big names that were supposed to be on the move, and that didn't happen either. Alvin Kamara was supposedly being shopped, and he stayed. DJ Moore was a chance that he got traded. He stayed. So it was still an amazing trade deadline. I couldn't ask for anything better as a NFL fan, but would have loved to see some other names get moved, especially from teams that are not going to be all that good down the stretch. And maybe have it, would have been nice to see teams that are supposed to always be good have a chance at competing. And those teams didn't make moves, and it's not going to happen. But yeah. Is that all we got?
That's it.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate it. We hope you guys have a great rest of the week. Hope you enjoyed this little special episode we did here. And we will see you next week. Tune in tomorrow to my 90-second news. I will quickly run through every trade that happened in 90 seconds as fast as I possibly can. But appreciate you guys, and see you tomorrow. And we'll be back with another episode next week. Peace.